Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Tui and welcome to our webinar all about ELA and our Ozobot Learn Anywhere lessons. We are so excited to have you all here with us today. We have some exciting content to share with you. We'll go ahead and with that. Again, my name is Melissa Tui. I'm the EdTech and Adoption Specialist here at Ozobot. I'm a former kindergarten and first grade teacher. I founded a coding, engineering, design thinking program in South LA, and I've coached teachers in implementing computer science in their classrooms. When I'm not at Ozobot, I'm at UCLA pursuing my doctorate in educational leadership. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jen to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Jen Maher. I currently work as the customer experience specialist as well as a curriculum developer for Ozobot. I have many years of teaching experience at many different grade levels, most recently middle school math and science. And I also have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. Adrian.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us during what we know is a really busy time. I'm Adrian White. I'm the Director of Marketing at Ozobot, so I have the pleasure of working closely with our talented EDU team. I've been with Ozobot for about 4 years and have a background in both art and technology. And I dropped this in the chat as well, but when I joined Ozobot, launched the Ozobot blog, and I'm still one of the authors there, so be sure to check that out because you'll see a lot of Melissa and Jen's content featured.
And we'll be referencing that blog. It's a really, really great resource to find all this information. If you don't necessarily have the time to follow our webinars every week on a weekly basis, we do summarize a lot of the content in that blog. So feel free to follow that and check us out there. It's a really great resource. So with that, if you have not heard about our Learn Anywhere lessons, we have created new lesson packages to help serve you teachers. We know that this is an incredibly challenging time with things being uncertain, having kids in remote settings, potentially hybrid settings, or potentially face-to-face. So we've created content that can fit under any circumstance and hopefully be as helpful as possible and take the heavy lifting off of you during these really challenging times. So with our Learn Anywhere lesson content, our focus right now is on 2nd through 5th grade lessons, which we'll be covering some of that ELA content today. Our recommended pacing is 1 lesson per week, and these activities are about 30 to 45 minutes for students. All of these lessons are going to be Common Core Math or Common Core ELA aligned, or NGSS aligned, along with 1 ISTE standard and 1 CSTA standard. So all lessons will be aligned to at least 3 different standards from 3 different standard bands. All lessons include synchronous lesson plans. If you are teaching face-to-face, we have that traditional lesson plan for you. If you are teaching face-to-face, but you're not quite comfortable teaching computer science or robotics yet, we have an instructional video for you that you can use to help guide your instruction. If you are teaching remotely, that video is student-facing so that students can self-guide and self-pace themselves through the lesson, so it can be used in multiple ways. There's also a student activity guide for any student that may need that extra resource of having a printed out guide for them. We have included that for you, but all of that content is covered in the instructional video. So that's just like a safety net in case there is a student that needs that extra accommodation. And then all the student activity sheets are included as well, and a potential solution or a teacher answer key is included in every single lesson so that you know exactly what to expect of your students when they turn in their content. So here's an example of what the synchronous lesson plans look like. You can see it includes everything that a traditional lesson plan has, from direct instruction to student practice to standards and materials. All of that is included for you. And again, all of this content is covered in the video. So if you don't have the time to teach this yourself, or if you're just looking for a way to take the heavy lifting off of yourself, we highly recommend that you utilize those videos to full capacity, because that's what they're there for. Here's some examples of what the answer keys and potential solutions look like. Again, these come with every single lesson package. If you have not attended these Learn Anywhere lesson webinars before, we do highly recommend that your students start with the Introduction to Ozobot lessons, which are weeks 1 through 4. We did host a webinar a couple weeks back, and we have the link to that information at the end of this slide deck, so that you can always go back and revisit that. But those are the first 4 that we recommend every student starts with. And then you can pick and choose ELA, math, science content to move on to from there. So those lessons were covered in a previous webinar. Feel free to take a look at that content so that you can familiarize yourself with it. Today, we are going to be covering 2nd through 5th grade ELA lessons. Jen has had a very heavy hand in developing these, and I'm very proud of what we have to share with you today. Some really exciting and fun lessons. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jen so that she can speak about these 4 lessons.
Thanks, Melissa. Go ahead and take a look at these 4 lessons that we have so far to share with you today. We have one from 2nd, one from 3rd, one from 4th, and one from 5th grade. And even though they've been given that designation of a grade, they're very customizable for any grade that you want to use them for. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first lesson we're going to talk about today is called Picking Out Irregular Plural Nouns. So if you have, for example, someone who's English as a second language learner, or someone who just struggles with language arts, even if they're in 5th grade or 6th grade, you could still use this lesson for them. So Melissa, will you click on the video and let's watch the very beginning of this video?
Hi everyone, Miss Tui here. In today's lesson, you are going to learn all about irregular plural nouns. You will program your bot to travel to the correct irregular plural noun, use it in a sentence, and then read that sentence. For today's lesson, you will need an Ozobot fully charged and calibrated, your color code markers, a pencil, and your Picking Out Plural Nouns activity sheets. Make sure to have both pages. In today's lesson, you are going to be able to use and spell irregular plural nouns. You'll also use your Ozobot to code your way to the correct irregular plural noun. Let's review irregular plural nouns. That can be a mouthful to say, but we can break it up to better understand what it means. Irregular means these words do not follow a common rule. Plural means there's more than one. And a noun is a person, a place, or a thing. Most nouns can become plural by adding S at the end, but not irregular plural nouns. Irregular plural nouns must be spelled differently to mean more than one person, place, or thing. Let's look at some examples of irregular plural nouns. One wild dog is called a wolf, but when there is more than one dog, the word becomes wolves. One grown female is called a woman, but a group of grown females are called women. One six-sided counter is called a die, but more than one six-sided counters are called dice.
Okay, go ahead and hit that pause button, Melissa. So from watching the beginning of this video, you can see that the explanation at the beginning of the video is very clear, and it's an opportunity for you to step back a little bit, let Melissa do some of the teaching, and then if your students have questions, they can still ask you, but most of that heavy lifting, as Melissa said, is done for you already. So that's part of the beauty of having these videos here. They also come with worksheets, or activity sheets as we like to call them, because they're a little more fun than work. This particular one has an opportunity for your students to pick out the word that they need to find and then to code their Ozobot to go to that word. So in the first example, it says over in that little bracket part, it says foot. So that would be your singular word. And then they have to choose which one is the correct plural form. Is it foots or is it feet? When they realize, oh, that's feet, they can write it up in the sentence next to the problem number. And then they'll decide whether their Ozobot needs to turn right or turn left. They'll put in the correct code. There's a color code key down in the bottom left-hand corner of the page, so they always know where to find that color code. So then also, not only do they need to put in that color code, but they need to pay attention to what direction the code, the robot is going in order to put the code in the right direction. So directionality is also a part of this lesson. The other great part about this particular lesson is that it also has a blank template to go with it. So if your students are already familiar with all of these words, oh, I skipped the answer key. It has an answer key too. We'll come back to that in a second. But there's a blank template. So if you wanted to use different words or something else even for this particular activity, you could fill in your own words or other thing, and then your students could write their own sentence, or you could fill in the sentence for them and let them fill in the blank. So this empty template is, a blank template is a really fabulous way to extend this lesson to either other subjects or to help students who are struggling or who need a little more challenge. Here's an opportunity for them to be able to do that. Let's go back to that answer key, Melissa. Sorry, I forgot that was the next slide. So every activity sheet that we have also comes with either a sample answer sheet if it's something that's random, or it comes with basically an answer sheet that the students should come up with the same answer. So this particular one has the color codes already in it. It has the words in the sentence that are supposed to be there. So you could just either go through and check this next to what your students turn in, or your students can check it themselves. That is available in the PDF that comes with this lesson. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Melissa. Again, there's that blank sheet. So here's another opportunity for us to watch a clip of the video from, oh, I forgot to mention, each one of these videos, they're available as the full video, and they're also available in chapters. So if your students watch the whole video and then they think, oh, I didn't understand what she was saying in this section, they can actually go back to that particular section of the video and just watch that section. So that's also a really handy thing. So go ahead and hit that play button, Melissa.
Now that you have chosen and checked the irregular plural noun, it's time to code. You will use a color code to program your bot to move to the correct plural noun. You will see a color code key on your map with two different color codes. The sequence green, black, red will tell Ozobot to turn left when it gets to an intersection, and blue, red, green will tell your bot to turn right when it gets to an intersection. Let's look at my paper. I'm going to turn my paper for a moment so you can see the direction that Ozobot needs to travel from start. In order for my bot to move forward to feet, it needs to turn left. I will use my color code markers to complete the path by coloring the empty boxes with the left at intersection color code. I remember that my bot is traveling from start, so I will start with green, move to black, and finish with red. Can you use your color code markers to color the turn left color code in the empty boxes on the path?
Fantastic. So that's the lesson that we've designated for second grade. Again, that lesson is very customizable, and you can use that to differentiate for different grade levels, different words, even different subjects if you so desire. The third grade lesson we have today is called How to Make a Sandwich. And this lesson addresses the opportunity your students have to figure out how to write instructions for any given task. I think we're going to skip the video for this one this time, so let's just go to the next slide. So in this particular lesson, they are going to plan how they make their sandwich, and then they're going to code the steps of their sandwich making. So it really requires students to analyze exactly what's happening when they're doing something that happens in a sequence. So with the sandwich planner, they have to name what kind of sandwich they're going to make. They have to include all the ingredients that they're going to use. They need to list all the equipment that they need to accomplish this task. And then they have to go through and write down all the steps that they take to accomplish making a sandwich. Then they also get to write a little conclusion about what they're going to do with their sandwich, which could be quite imaginative and fun, actually. In this particular lesson, it doesn't have to be a real sandwich. One of the things that I actually wrote this lesson, and one of the things that I was thinking about as I was writing it is my younger brother. When he was about 2 or 3 years old, my mom had a cassette tape, and that's telling you how old I am. And she would ask us questions on this cassette tape. And she asked him what kind of sandwich was his favorite. And he said a truck sandwich. And so then she proceeded to ask him what was on the truck sandwich. And it's a really cute, funny thing. And we still have the recording, so we laugh at it quite a bit. But that was actually what I was thinking of when I was going through and writing this lesson. So if your students either don't like sandwiches or you want them to do something a little more imaginative, that's also an option with this lesson. It doesn't have to be a real sandwich. The example that Melissa uses is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which, you know, is a pretty standard sandwich, I think, in a lot of households. So it's kind of a fun way and for students to get creative if you want them to do that as well. As an extension of this lesson, you could actually have them draw a picture of their sandwich or a picture of their ingredients to go with it. And they could even use this as a jumping off point to write a story or something like that as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Melissa. So this lesson also has a potential solution. So you would use 2 pieces of bread, peanut butter, and grape jelly as your ingredients, a butter knife, plate, and a toaster if you were going to toast your bread. And then each one of those steps that you would use to actually accomplish this making of the sandwich, including gathering your ingredients together. The color codes in this particular lesson are pretty fun too, because they don't have to be, they're not like a standard code. So for example, in step 1, tornado is the potential example because it reminded me of gathering ingredients. So when you gather ingredients, you kind of are going around and gathering ingredients. So I was thinking tornado around the kitchen. And I'm sure many 3rd graders, if you ask their mom or dad, what happens when they make something in the kitchen, it turns into a tornado. So that was a good one for gathering. But they also can use other codes. Again, there's a directionality component to this as well, because if you'll notice on the activity sheet, the Ozobot's going one direction as it starts, but then it comes around a corner and goes the other way, goes around the corner and goes the original direction. So they have to really pay attention also to the direction their Ozobot is going in this particular lesson as well. Another extension of this lesson is, again, it doesn't have to be a sandwich they're making. It can be something else. So The other part of that is you could say to a student who maybe struggles, you only need 2 ingredients, you need 2 pieces of equipment, and you only have to write 3 steps. Or you could extend it for those early finishers and say, instead of just a one sentence for your conclusion, what you're going to do with your sandwich, write a whole paragraph or write a whole story. Or they could even make their own map. They don't have to use that activity sheet, or they could even extend the activity sheet. So there's a lot of different ways that you could extend this lesson or differentiate it for different students. Let's go to that next slide. Let's watch a little bit of this video.
Using the information on the sandwich planner, we will complete the activity sheet quickly and easily. On the line for step 1, I'll write an explanation for step 1. Then I will fill in the color code above the line in the first set of color code blanks. If your color code has 3 blocks, fill in the 4th with black to continue the line. Can you complete the activity page using the information from the planning page?
So also the other great part about this is after each chapter, there's a call to action. So it gives the students instructions. This is exactly what you need to do to complete this part of the lesson. And it's very clear, it's very succinct, it's usually 1 line, maybe 2, so they know exactly what they need to do to accomplish that part of the lesson. So let's go on to the next slide. This next lesson is a 4th grade lesson called ID the Structure, and it's a language arts lesson. Obviously, that's what our webinar is about today. But this particular lesson helps students identify whether a passage of writing is chronological, uses comparison, is a cause and effect, or is a problem solution. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. In this lesson, there's passages that they need to read. There's color codes for filling in the activity sheet. Once they decide each passage is a chronological, problem solution, comparison, or cause and effect, they actually will then code their bot to go to a certain place on the activity sheet page. I've totally just blanked what I was going to say. The great part about this lesson is that, again, it's customizable. If you wanted to change out the writing passages, you absolutely could do that. You would just want to make sure they match what's on the activity map so that their Ozobot would go to the right structure. So if you had struggling readers, or if you have people who need a challenge, you could change out those writing passages very simply and easily. And it's very easily differentiated for your students. Kids can work together on this to decide whether their codes are correct. Especially if you're meeting in person, if you're remote on a Zoom meeting, they could even work together to do that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, which is the answer key. So here we provide an answer key, which includes the answer key for the passages as well as the color codes for the map. Let's go to the next slide and watch that video, Melissa.
First of all, let's define the structure, then we'll see how it is used. With chronology, the events in the story or passage are told as if they were happening one thing after another in time. You can often spot a chronological structure because you'll notice words like first, then, next, and finally. On the ID the structure reading passages sheet, can you find one passage whose structure is chronology? Write chronology on the line at the beginning of the passage.
Thanks, Melissa. This is to me, webinars are hard because I love to answer questions, and it's really hard for me to not say, does anybody have any questions or comments about that? So I apologize if I go, anyway. So the next lesson that we're talking about today is the 5th grade ELA lesson called Prepositions by Chance. This is actually one of the more fun lessons that I created because it uses line switch codes. So Melissa, will you hit that play button?
It looks like it might be having a little trouble loading. Are you all still able to see my screen? Let me try this again.
Yeah, but it is spinning.
Spinning.
Hi everyone, Miss Tui here. Today we are going to cover parts of speech. Noun, I know that one. Adjective, that describes a noun. But preposition, I'm not so sure. Today we are going to define, identify, and use nouns, adjectives, and prepositions in our work. For today's lesson, you will need your Ozobot fully charged and calibrated, your Prepositions by Chance activity sheets, and your Prepositions by Chance map, and a pencil. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to identify, define, and use prepositions, nouns, and adjectives. Find your Prepositions by Chance activity sheet. Look at the top of the page. Let's begin by recording definitions. Let's review nouns first. Nouns are words that represent people, places, or things. Some examples of nouns include mailman, cat, hand, sky, and hamburger. Nouns are used as the subject of a sentence and also the object of a sentence, like the mailman delivered the packages. Mailman is a noun and the subject of a sentence. Packages is also a noun and the object of a sentence. Can you write the definition of a noun on your paper? Next, we have adjectives, which describe nouns. Some examples of adjectives are purple, soft, big, fluffy, and delicious. In the sentence, the fluffy cat was soft, we have 2 adjectives. Fluffy describes the cat, and so does soft. Can you write the definition of adjective on your paper? Now let's get around to prepositions. Prepositions establish relationships by telling us where, when, and how things are related to each other. Some examples of prepositions are over, under, and on. Those tell us the relationship of where. Before and after are prepositions that show us the relationship of when. Because of is an example of a preposition that shows how things are related. Can you write the definition of preposition on your paper?
Thanks, Melissa. Go ahead and hit that pause button. So as you can see, that particular lesson does a bit of explanation about and review about what those particular parts of speech are. The next part of the lesson actually has the Ozobot choosing words as it goes around a map. And so, Melissa, is that the clip that is on the next, on that last slide? Go ahead and play that.
Now for the most fun part of our activity. Find your prepositions by chance activity map. Grab your Ozobot and turn it on and place it in the middle facing any direction. Ozobot turns randomly at intersections, so you'll never know where it's going to go. When Ozobot comes to a word, decide whether that word is a noun, adjective, or preposition, and write the word in the appropriate column on your activity sheet. Let's do one together. I'll place Ozobot on start and we'll watch it go. The first word it came to is through. Is through a preposition, a noun, or an adjective? That's right, it's a preposition. Let Ozobot continue to move along the map and choose new words until you have all 16 words on your chart. If it crosses the same word more than once, only write it once on your activity sheet. After about 8 minutes, if your bot hasn't chosen all the words, go ahead and write the remaining words in the appropriate columns and move on to the sentences section of your activity sheet.
Thank you. So as you can see, the Ozobot actually gets to choose the words, and the student will decide whether the word that the Ozobot chose is a preposition, a noun, or an adjective, and they'll write it in this column. Then they get to write sentences using that word, but they get to be very imaginative about the sentences they write. As long as it has that word in it and it's used properly, you could mark it correct. This particular lesson also not only has them write a sentence, but it shows them, but they also need to show the relationship. So in this particular example, the word is behind in number 1, and the sentence is Supergirl flew behind the train. Then they need to use that word behind and tell the relationship of the nouns in that sentence. So behind shows the relationship between Supergirl and train. So not only do they have to choose the word, they also have to say what type of speech it is, what part of speech it is, and then they have to be able to explain the relationship as well. So this, even though this lesson is suggested for 5th grade, it doesn't have to be only used for 5th grade. You can actually go back in and change the words on the map if you'd like, so that the Ozobot is choosing different words. You can change what part of speech that they're working on. You can just say, okay, you need three words of each type. There's so many different ways you can differentiate this particular lesson for students who are struggling or students who need another challenge. You can add words to the map so that they have more words than just 16. Lots of different ways to use this particular lesson. Go ahead and go, and I believe that's the last one. Yeah, is that the last?
That is it, yes. Thank you so much, Jen. Again, Jen had a very deep hand in creating a lot of this content, and we just thank her so much for bringing so much fun and creativity and engagement to these lessons. We know that our vision for these series of lessons was to take that heavy lifting off of teachers and to provide a lot of really engaging and fun learning for students, and we're really hopeful that we are delivering on that for you and your students. So what we can expect in the future, we are going to continue this webinar series with our regular releases of lessons. This is just a list of lesson titles, a quick sneak peek, if you will, into what content will be coming out soon. So keep an eye out on our webinar page, because we will be announcing these lessons, releasing them into the library, and then having thorough and in-depth webinars such as the one today to dive deeper into the content and to share those either integration ideas or scaffolding ideas, as Jen has done during this webinar. Some quick examples of stuff that we are going to share in the future. There is a second grade ELA lesson that is vowel addition, where students are learning about long and short vowels. In third grade, there's a math lesson all about fractions. So this is a really, really fun way to integrate Ozobot and fractions for your students. In fourth grade, we will be featuring a lesson about, oh my gosh, these words are, oh my gosh, the term for these are, there's not synonyms, but they are homophones, is that right?
Yeah.
So students will use their bot, and their bot will guide them to a homophone. For example, on this page, it's there, or there, and they have to determine the meaning. We help explain it, they determine the meaning, and then have to use it in a sentence. That was a really fun video to shoot, by the way. There was a little bit of confusion on my end trying to figure out those different word meanings. And then in fifth grade, we have a maze of operations, where students will be learning about order of operations and applying those skills to solve a maze to make sure that their bot can travel from beginning to end. So again, Jen and the education team have had a very deep hand in developing these lessons, and we just want to thank her for all of her hard work and creativity and ingenuity in creating all of this wonderful content. Again, this slide deck will be shared with you, or it will be on our webinar page under past webinars. You can access all of those lessons in our lesson library. They are currently live. And let me actually show you how, for anyone that isn't familiar with our lesson library, you'll want to create a free Ozobot account, Ozobot Classroom account, which is at classroom.ozobot.com. You'll see your educator dashboard when you get logged in. And then here under lessons, these are all the lessons in our lesson library. And you can see there's a combination of Ozobot developed lessons and user generated content. So you can see that a lot of our certified educators and just fans of Ozobot have created their own content and added it to our library as well. To find these lessons or any remote friendly lessons, you'll see that there is a remote friendly filter here, and you can check that and apply it to find all of the lessons that are remote friendly, that have the video support and all the components of these lesson packages for you. Speaking of the Ozobot blog earlier, there is a recap on how to use these lessons in your various different settings on the Ozobot blog. We've covered everything from hybrid to remote to using Google Classroom to not using Google Classroom. There's a bunch of different ways that you can use and implement these resources. So be sure to check that out. And again, the webinar recording for the Introduction to Color Codes lessons are, the link is there as well. I'm now going to pass it over to Adrian, who's going to share about Student View and our one-to-one program. Adrian, would you like to take the screen?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so Melissa was just giving you guys a glimpse at the teacher view within Ozobot Classroom. Now we're going to talk about the student view. So this is the student side of that remote friendly content that you've seen today. Real quick, I just want to thank you guys, Melissa and Jen, for not only developing this content, but walking everyone through it. And there's a couple of things I want to just mention and highlight about the student view before we actually open it up. Our interactive student view, it's brand new, just rolled out, and it leverages Ozobot Classroom's integration with Google Classroom. So this student view is only for schools and teachers who are using Google Classroom. The way it works is that your students access this interactive view using their Google Classroom accounts. So you don't have to deal with new login info for your students. We want to keep it simple and let you guys keep using the tech tools that you're already using. For anyone who doesn't have Google Classroom, don't worry. You can still use this remote friendly content in our Learn Anywhere lesson series. If you want to get step-by-step instructions for that, go to our blog. Melissa has laid all this out for you. So if you go to the blog and then lessons, there is a post. Well, really, you can open any of these posts. Like here's the one for today's lessons, and access our full schedule and steps for instruction from there. These steps for instruction go through whether you have a Google Classroom account or do not have a Google Classroom account, whether you're teaching in person or remotely. So again, we just wanted to make sure you guys are covered no matter what your situation is. But for those of you using Google Classroom, so your students, again, are going to be able to log in with their Google Classroom accounts. This student view has been designed to be remote friendly and remote first, but it can also be used in class. Just want to highlight that. And the whole thing is really designed to save you guys, the teachers, time while still working hard to keep your students highly engaged and keep them feeling supported. So the way it works, when you create an assignment for your students within Ozobot Classroom, they actually get an email notification, a Google Classroom email notification, just like they typically do. Here's kind of what that will look like for your students. They'll click open, and that opens up Google Classroom. From here, I can click Ozobot Classroom to actually get to my assignment. So here I am logging in as a student. Again, I'm going to use my Google account. And from this point forward, students are stepped through it, guided through the whole experience, screen by screen. And also, so it covers what they're gonna learn and objectives, what they'll need, and then those bite-sized, engaging video lessons that the team has been showing you today. As your students work through this, if they have any questions, they can get back to Google Classroom to message you the way they usually communicate with you. But let's say I've run through the lesson, I'm now ready to submit my work. Students can submit up to 3 images here to show you their work. And from there, you're gonna get that notification both within your Ozobot Classroom account on the teacher side and within Google Classroom. As you grade your students' work, it shows up in both places as well. Everything's synced and makes it simple for you. So students are going to be able to access these lessons via that Google Classroom email notification. If you ever need to point them towards the student view, you can use this link, classroom.ozobot.com/student. And all of this content is available for free for everyone right now. But I do want to mention that eventually the remote friendly Learn Anywhere lessons are going to be primarily for customers of the Ozobot one-to-one program. To be specific about that, all of our introductory lessons and some of the first math and ELA lessons we've covered in these recent webinars, including today's, will still be available for everyone, but there will be a cutoff point as we keep producing this weekly content. So just be aware of that, and I'll walk through really quickly the Ozobot one-to-one program. I know we've got questions waiting in the Q&A, so I'm going to cover this quick. But essentially, the Ozobot one-to-one program is our response to the challenges of COVID-19 and this kind of next normal for education. We've taken a lot of what the EDU community already knew and loved about Ozobot, like our 2 ways to code and Ozobot Classroom, but then wraps in that new remote-friendly content and experience for your students. It's packaged more as a subscription. So we've got 2-year and 3-year subscriptions for the one-to-one program. If you're curious and want to learn more about this, we'll give you a link for getting in touch with one of our account executives. They can walk you through the different subscriptions and also actually look at funding options for you. But just to break down how it works for everyone involved, so every one of your students will get an Ozobot. That's to keep them engaged wherever they're learning, whether they're in class with you or learning remotely at home. Also, you get worry-free bot replacements. So we know that accidents happen, especially when students are taking things home or bringing them back and forth between the classroom and home. So 20% of your bots in this program are going to be replaced from the beginning and then after your first year. For teachers get access to all these ready to run remote-friendly Learn Anywhere lessons, including what you've seen today and more that are coming down the pipeline. On that point, I just want to mention we've got not only more math and ELA coming up in future webinars, but also some seasonal and multicultural holiday lessons coming up for Hall Week, and then the holiday winter season as well. So keep an eye out for those. Teachers also get access to PD and training within Ozobot Classroom and white glove support from our customer experience team. For the district side, the school or district side, they actually get this capability to track student engagement wherever students are working, and even when they're working beyond screens with our color codes. So that's a really unique feature of our program. So I mentioned if you are curious about the one-to-one program, maybe you think it's not possible for your school or your budget, everything's up in the air this year, I do encourage you to go ahead and book a demo with one of our account executives. We're really committed to working with schools and districts and finding solutions that work for you guys. And we're also trying to stay really abreast of funding opportunities you can take advantage of for this, including the CARES Act. So the place you can go to book a demo and learn more and get a quote is ozobot.com/hybrid. Don't worry about, taking up anyone's time. We're happy to connect with you guys, find out what your needs and concerns are, and see if we can help. So this just lists some of the funding sources we can provide some insights on. And with that, oh, one last thing. If you really think it's not possible for your school to go one-to-one, we do have a giveaway, our Learn Anywhere giveaway. It's tied to the Ozobot one-to-one program. It allows you to take an entire class of up to 36 students one-to-one. And that actually was supposed to end today. We extended it through tomorrow. So definitely go to our blog. You can find the giveaway there or this link right here and enter before it ends. So with that, we can get into Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian. I think one question that came up in the chat was if the videos were going to be supported or videos in other languages. We plan to add subtitles in different languages soon. If you have any specific requests for languages, please feel free to reach out to support@ozobot.com. That way we can know what languages we should prioritize first and get those out to you and your students. Julia has a question about what software do people use to make their own line maps? I use PowerPoint, but it's slow, and I'm curious if people had a better method. Jen, I don't know if you have any insight into that. I know our creative team had a couple comments about that, but.
Yeah, a lot of people use Google Draw, and that seems to work really well for them because you can decide how wide you want your line to be. Yeah, so Google Draw is a good one, actually.
Yeah, I think Google Draw is a great option. This is also just an educator, Tom, on YouTube has shared how he uses Google Sheets to create color code maps because you can make all the columns and rows the perfect width and then just start filling them in. So this is on YouTube. It might be a good tool too.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Leanne has a question. How do students know if they're wrong? For example, in the lesson of irregular nouns, what happens if the student chooses foots instead of feet? And actually, Adrian, do you mind if I take the screen back? I want to actually show from teacher view, while the student might not get a live feedback of, the bots unfortunately not going to tell it, oh, you're right or you're wrong. It doesn't have that capability built in. What we have built in is if you are integrated with Google Classroom, your students will, if you click on classes and you've set this up through Google Classroom and you go into the class, you can see I scheduled a demo a couple weeks ago and I added some lessons here. But there is a finished lesson. The Introduction to Ozobot Gets to Know EVA lesson is here. And my one student, my colleague PA, has finished his work and turned it in. So what I can do here as a teacher is I'll see a list of all my students and all the work that they turned in. And he actually told me, I can't print, sorry, this assignment made him feel sad because he wasn't able to print. But this is where you would be able to go in, review their work, and actually give them feedback so that if they needed to go back and correct work or redo their work, you have that opportunity to do so. So it's not, it's that natural progress of student doing work and you receiving it and reviewing it and then closing the loop with them. So that closing of the loop is still on the teacher to have to do. but also in Teacher View, this is where if you are connected to Google Classroom, you can assign a grade. You can see I gave PA 10 points for effort, and that syncs with Google Classroom. So I hope that answers your question. You can think of it as traditional classwork. There's, encourage students to check their work and encourage them to ask an adult or an older sibling or somebody around to check their work as well if that's available to them. And you as an educator can also be a resource for them as well. Hope that is helpful. Clemens has a question. It's that I noticed that the EvoBit filter option produces quite some Evo activities. Maybe we could take a look at that. I'm assuming, Clemens, that you are speaking in regards to our lesson library. We will pass that on to our engineering team just to let them know that that filter needs to be looked at. So thank you for bringing that up. Leanne has another question. Is the one-to-one program available in Canada? Adrian, do you know the answer to that question?
We do have one of our account executives who covers international, so we can definitely put you in touch with him. I'll just message you directly for your email address if that sounds good.
Great. And then Margie is asking if there is a simulator for Ozobot, if there is a simulator. While we don't have a simulator for Ozobot itself, we do have our Ozobot games that has a simulator type feature. So if you're interested in having that simulator type of experience, if you go to ozobot.com, you click on Create. It's taking a minute to load here. And then you click on, oh my gosh, I believe it's under challenges?
Under challenges, correct.
Thank you. It changed, the website changed. Under challenges, we have Ozotown, which, let me open this into a new tab. Shape Tracer 1 and Shape Tracer 2. And these are all simulator type games that students can access and use to learn that computer science. All of the blocks that are needed are here on the side for the student to use. There's 10 different levels, and we actually have a webinar for each of these games that we recorded earlier this summer. So feel free to check out our past webinars page to get some best practices and just more information about how to utilize those in the classroom. So that's your best bet for looking for a simulator type of program for your students. Great. Are there any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the Q&A. I don't know if any came up in the chat. Did anyone from the Ozobot team see any that came up in the chat while we were speaking?
I think we captured them all.
Great, wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We know it's the beginning of the school year. Things are very, very interesting at this time of year, especially with given all that is going on. So we really, really appreciate everyone taking the time to come and learn more about these Ozobot lessons. We will be having more webinars regularly with our releases, and our next one is in 2 weeks. Is that right, Adrian? So come back again soon. And as always, these webinar recordings are available on our webinar page. Thank you again, Jen, for developing such wonderful lessons, and Adrian and Cassandra for participating and supporting us today in our webinar. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.